Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining this session. So tonight we're going to talk about introduction to data jobs. So we will be discussing a few different data roles, such as data analytics, data engineering, as well as data science. We'll briefly touch on generative AI and how AI and ML engineering works. So yeah, I expect you to ask a lot of questions, and that's why I didn't use a formal presentation. I'm mainly going to use Notion to walk you through. I think I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, and let's have a discussion. And hopefully, along the way, I can convey my message, and hopefully that's useful for everyone. If you're in the process of sort of career switching or trying to get into data science or data engineering. Okay, let's get started. So first of all, a quick introduction to WeCloudData. I think many of you have attended past events. You know that we are a training academy, and we primarily focus on training data scientists, data engineers, as well as AI engineers. If you're interested in watching past event recordings, you can go to youtube.com/@WeCloudData. I think we upload most of the recordings to our YouTube channel, so you can find those. We also have, some career guides such as data scientist, BI, data engineering. It covers a lot of details from, what is data science, the type of data science jobs, data science roles, and then, how do you get started in job market and things like that. So yeah, I think you know where to find us if you have questions or you're interested in attending one of our data courses. Let's start from the definition. What is data science or the type of data jobs? And when it comes to data jobs, I think there's three main categories: data engineering, data analytics, and data science. And of course, there are other data-related jobs such as AI, with a focus on machine learning or maybe generative AI, but data is an important part of it, right? So I guess my first question to everyone is that how familiar are you with like data engineering, data analytics, and data science? Like, do you have any questions? So for example, do you know what a data engineer do? Some of you may come from data fields already, so feel free to chime in. And I'm happy to, discuss and share my experience and insight. You can type your message into Zoom chat, or feel free to unmute yourself as well. Anybody coming from the data industry already? Maybe you work as a data engineer, or you work as a business analyst.
No, actually, I'm enrolled in a course of data analytics right now.
Oh, hey, Nishan, how are you
Hey,
doing?
good, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. All right. So you want to tell us
So,
your understanding of data engineering and data
not the engineering, like, I'm enrolled in a course, diploma course,
Okay.
in data analytics right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Welcome to this event. Anything you would like to share?
Thank
Have you
you.
started the training yet?
Yeah, well, I've started the training, like, I did Excel, Power BI,
Okay.
and we're gonna that data handling, and we're gonna start like SAS soon.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Um,
we did three of the modules like Power BI, Excel, and data handling.
okay. So you mentioned a couple of tools, right?
Yeah,
Excel, Power BI, and then I think you mentioned SAS as well.
yeah,
These are the tools I think business analysts, data analysts would typically use for data analytics jobs. And sometimes data scientists use these tools as well. Have you
yes.
learned Python as well?
Sorry, what?
Did you learn Python in your
No,
training?
we're gonna learn in future Python, R, SAS. Yeah, we're gonna learn in future.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Anybody else who would like to introduce yourself or maybe tell us a bit, about your understanding of the data industry? So Shaitan is saying that data engineering is about making sure the data is collected and stored in the right way. Yeah, I think that's correct. Partially. First of all, actually, the reason why I put data engineering on the top, I would like to introduce that first. It's because without data engineering, I think data scientists and data analysts wouldn't even have the right data to work with. So you're absolutely correct. I think data engineers need to make sure that data is not only collected and stored in the right system, but they also need to be stored in the right way. That sort of includes data cleaning, right? Data ingestion, understanding the business rules, because in a typical business, there are data coming from many different sources and different systems. You might be dealing with 50 different data sources and even more. So in that case, if a data analyst need to build dashboard, you need a decent data model. And the data model has, tables and schema, and the data may come from many different systems. And someone need to do the job and do the pipeline to prepare the data for this kind of tasks. And that is very important because in any kind of data system, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? So when data engineers help companies ingest data into, data warehouse or databases, it's very important for them to they're playing a very essential role because they do need to understand how data is generated by different systems. There are a lot of business logics they need to apply to get the data into the right format. So the downstream analytics tasks can become a lot easier. And that is so important. If you have ever worked in a startup environment where that the company doesn't have a proper data warehouse or a data lake yet, and then who's doing the data analytics work, it's such a painful process because they'll have to write a lot of scripts and a lot of code to manipulate data. But with the help of data engineers, I think you can not only produce high quality analytics work, but also you can do that with even real time data sometimes. So that is very important. Okay. But if you dive deeper into the data engineering field, it's actually pretty complex. There are a lot of things, a lot of tools you need to learn. So I'll give you a very high level introduction to data engineering, or at least the kind of tools you need to know in order to become a data engineer. Okay. So let's say tools data engineer needs to know. And the landscape here for the tools landscape for data engineering is very very overwhelming. There's so many different things you can learn. I'm going to list a few important things, but it doesn't mean that you need to know everything in order to get a job. And usually you just need to be very good at some of these tools, and then I think you'll be able to find a job. And then of course there are different types of data engineering jobs depending on the kind of tools you work with, right? So on the data ingestion side, right, that's where usually, the beginning of the funnel, you need to collect data from different sources, right? That's the starting point. So you need basically data ingestion, right? These could be, ETL developers or, big data engineers and even sometimes, software engineers. That work with different kinds of data ingestion tools and working with or even building connectors, right? Some of the traditional tools people use for ingestion are enterprise tools, but in the community right now, if you would like to build tools quickly to get a job, I think you need to know a few data ingestion tools such as Apache Airbyte, for example. Airbyte is basically a data ingestion tool, and it's low code, and it has connectors or integration with many different data sources. Let's think of a fictitious company that sells some kind of product, right? So that means they need to do marketing to sell their product. They have to do promotions, and once they have the customers, they have to manage the customer relationship. So they need CRM tools as well. So typically companies will be working with, marketing tools such as MailChimp, right? They might, use Google Sheet, for some sort of simple data, collection and manipulation. For CRM, they may work, HubSpot, and they may work with some sort of, text messaging tools. But a list of like 15, 20 essential tools that need to manage, their product and sales and marketing. And the problem with this is that data you need, right? It's siloed and it's stored in many different, platforms. The job of a data engineer is to actually ingest these data from MailChimp, HubSpot, different systems into a centralized location, right? That could be a data lake, it could be a modern data warehouse, which are basically just databases that store data. So you need to collect data from these different data sources, and sometimes data just come from the web, right? Especially when companies want to build their large language models or do fine tunings, and you need to collect a lot of data. For example, ChatGPT was pretty much trained on the entire, like the data collected from the web. And so they did a lot of web scraping, and now they get into all kinds of legal issues. But that's probably what most of the company do. And some companies, such as UAE's, Falcon models are built on some open data. Meta's Llama model was trained on some open data. But if you read those, articles and paper, you realize that they typically work with 15, 20 different major data sources. That requires a lot of data engineering as well. So data ingestion is the first part, right? You need to get the data into the warehouse. And then there's the part of analytics engineering. It's good that you have data engineers or developers who collect data and store them in a centralized place. But who's going to sort of prepare those data, right? If you get hired as a data scientist that work in a product team, a marketing team, you are typically not involved in those data ingestion process, which happens on IT side. And you don't really understand those sophisticated business rules. A lot of data scrubbing, a lot of things that need to be sort of figured out. So this is where analytics engineers come in. These are the engineers who understand business logics, and they know how to prepare data and sort of do ETL or ELT. ETL stands for like data extraction, transformation, and loading, right? Load means loading data into a warehouse. But there's also some other process, which is called ELT, which basically means that after data extraction, we're going to load the data into the warehouse first, and then do all the transformation in the warehouse. And the modern data analytics engineer usually prefer to work with the ELT stack. And ETL has been around for so many years, and it's a pretty traditional approach, but still very powerful. Okay. Things analytics engineers need to know include database systems and data warehouse tools such as let's say Google BigQuery, Snowflake. You must have heard about Snowflake, data warehouse. In Amazon, then Redshift. So there are different kinds of data warehouse tools. If you would like to build workflow, a lot of SQL-based transformations, look into dbt, which is the data build tool. It's very popular right now. If you would like to work as an analytics engineer, I strongly recommend you learn dbt. And of course, there are other tools that you can use, such as Python, Spark, and Airflow. But dbt works pretty well in a modern data stack, and it has really good integration with some of these tools. And of course, you need to understand data modeling and the fundamentals of data warehouse. So a lot of SQL, but that's very important. So data. There are data engineers that purely focus on data ingestion. That's a big job, right? You may, in terms of the path, you may actually just switch from project to project because there are new data sources that a company will build, all the time. And you need to understand systems and integrating with many different data sources and working with APIs. And sometimes you might need to write APIs yourself as well. What if there's one, data source which is not very popular and they don't really have a connector provided by Airbyte? So you might need to sort of roll up your sleeves and just write the connector yourself in Python. So coding skill is very important as well. When it comes to analytics engineering, of course, the most popular job title is just analytics engineer. And then basically working on data warehouse stuff, which is also very important. And they're also BI engineers. This role is somewhere in between BI, data analytics, and data engineering. And these are the BI developers who are very good with data modeling, and then they build business intelligence solution. And some other tools they work with include Power BI, right? And maybe writing DAX and things like that. But this can fall into under the data analytics or BI career path, but there are also BI developers who are like sort of very strong in data modeling. So they know how to build efficient data models so that the queries can run, quick, very fast, and then that really serves the dashboarding purpose well. Okay. There are also big data engineers. These are the folks who work with data lakes. Data warehouse has been very popular, but there are also different schools of thought when it comes to manipulating big data. For most of the companies, I think analytics engineering data warehouse will work really, really well. But for tech companies that has millions of customers that if they deal with hundreds of terabytes of data, I think the cost of data warehouse might be a bit high. And then very soon you're going to hit some sort of limitation, especially a lot of the data you work with, if are unstructured data, right? That doesn't fit into the SQL paradigm very well. And that's where you need to use tools like Python and Apache Spark to manipulate big data. And first of all, the data will need to be stored efficiently in a data lake. So we're talking about Hadoop HDFS, which is sort of like legacy systems already, but if you use Amazon, then it's simple storage service, right? S3. And data lake is just the sort of the data architecture storage layer on top of, right, S3 or blob storage, and Google has its own storage system as well. And then once the data is stored in the data lake, data engineers or big data engineer or developers will need to know how to use tools such as Apache Spark, Apache Flink to access the big data, and we're talking about terabytes of data and even petabyte scale data. And these jobs are typically quite expensive if you're going to do that in data warehouse. So you're going to leverage distributed system. Big data engineer jobs require definitely stronger coding skills, right? So if you're sort of transitioning from data analytics to data engineering, analytics engineering is relatively easier for you to get started with. And if you come from IT, software background, big data engineer might be something you want to look into. But you can always, sort of start from analytics engineering and then, eventually become a big data engineer. And in some companies, you probably need to do a bit of everything. But just so you know that when you learn data engineering, you need to find a focus as well. It's kind of hard to sort of master all of these right away. It takes years of experience. And then there are a lot of legacy tools, and sometimes people get confused. So they don't know what tool they need to focus on. But I would recommend probably just focus on the modern, tech stack, because the industry of data engineering is moving pretty fast. And a lot of the projects you will be working on is probably migrating from the old system to the new system. So you'll definitely get trained on those legacy tools, but you need to be really good at the new tools. So I think that's one of the exciting part of about data engineering. There are also some new trend, things like Lakehouse, but that's just the next version or next iteration of I guess big data or data lake. But we're talking more about streaming data, real-time data. So a lot of software engineers actually work in this category, but definitely if you are passionate about real-time systems and big data systems, that's definitely the direction to go. So yeah, this is just a very quick high-level summary of some different types of data engineering jobs. But when you look at this, it's just the end-to-end pipeline of a data engineering system. It always starts from data ingestion that involves, distributed messaging systems as well. There will be batch data ingestion. And of course, if you dive deeper, there's the real-time data ingestion. And once you ingest the data into the system, you either need to work with a data warehouse or a data lake, right? And on top of it, we're going to add, ETL, data transformations, and of course, data analytics, data science as well. So as you can see, data engineering is serving many other purposes, and their job is to make everyone else's life easier. So I really admire data engineers who can build large-scale systems. A lot of times it's not just about using the tools. In many big tech companies, data engineers are involved in building new tools and systems, and that's quite exciting. Okay. Data modeling is better a topic for data science or MLEs? I don't think so. I don't think machine learning engineers need to do a lot of data modeling. Orchestration tool, yeah. Thanks for the reminder. I think data engineers, because you're building data pipelines, and imagine you're dealing with like 50 different source data or the data systems. It's hard to do all of these manually. Definitely, you will need to know how to do automation. So end-to-end workflow orchestration using tools like Apache Airbyte. Airflow. Or data pipeline automation. So I would recommend tools like Apache Airflow that has been around for many years. It has really large community. Something a data engineer would definitely need to look into. Just checking out some of these comments here. Is it worth pursuing a career in data with the rise of AI in 2024? Especially data analyst? That's a good question. Well, first of all, my answer is definitely worth pursuing a career in data. I think generative AI or the rise of AI, it depends on how you look at it. But a lot of people who's pursuing PhD sort of start to become a little bit worried that AI is sort of progressing at a much faster pace. They spend 4 or 5 years, but they still can't. When ChatGPT or GPT-4 came out, you can't even beat it, right? Even Google's having trouble to sort of building a better model. So this is indeed evolving very fast. But the way I look at it, based on my limited view and experience, is that I think it's really making data analytics professional become more efficient. I don't think AI tools at the current stage is able to replace an experienced data analyst and data scientist. You will see a lot of useful demos or maybe exciting demos where you can just write some prompts and then it will generate SQL queries and generate visualizations. I think that's really cool, and I use that as well. But it sort of just replaces the very low level coding part, right? If you know Python and pandas, generating a pie chart, really just 2 lines of code. So I think that's what ChatGPT, for example, is really capable of doing right now. But data analytics is really not just about writing the queries. Even though, unfortunately, a lot of data professionals, they spend quite a bit of time writing queries and manipulating data. And the time they spend on these is actually not because writing code is hard. If you look at SQL, there are only a few SQL patterns. It's very easy to learn. But it's the business logic that's really complex. And that's why, even if you work as a data analyst in the same role, with different companies, your SQL query patterns might be very different because in some companies, the business logic is quite complex or the data is simply too messy. And then there's a lot of data cleaning to need to do. Today's generative AI, especially large language models, most of the times when we interact with a LLM, we do that through prompting. And prompting has a limitation on the context window, right? Even though the new GPT-4 or anthropic models. They have really large, long windows, but it doesn't mean that you can dump everything as in a context window and it's just going to work perfectly, because it's still going to suffer the memory issues. So, yeah. So if you have seriously tried to use ChatGPT to do your data analytics project, you realize that sometimes you'd rather just write the query yourself. It's just not there yet. So I'm definitely not worried about the data jobs being replaced. However, I think AI is indeed going to threaten a lot of jobs, but maybe the impact is much bigger in other categories, as creative jobs like writers, and even design, right? So yeah, I'm less worried about data jobs being replaced. But however, I think if you're just getting started with data, you should definitely not, your job is not just learning how to write SQL code. That's not enough. You need to understand different use cases. You need to have the experience of working with many different types of data, and that helps you build the experience. Because when you write the queries, it's not the syntax that matters. It's the business logic that matters, right? It's just like software engineering. If you really rely on ChatGPT to do your job, you're going to be very frustrated because the reasoning part of these AI tools is just not there yet. But maybe someday it's going to become crazy good, but at least not in the near future. That's just my 2 cents on this. Yeah, I'm not really worried because I tried to use ChatGPT to do my job. It's just impossible. Okay. Yeah, so Thomas said regarding AI, someone needs to teach the model, but we teach the model through prompting, but there's still limitation. So all of these pre-trained models, it really depends on the data used for learning, right? So that's why there's a fine-tuning category and also the retriever augmented generation. So it doesn't have a knowledge base, right? So you feed the data into the pre-training process and it start to have memories. It can only memorize so much, unless you feed the entire world's data, but that's impossible, right? The biggest models are probably still just trained on terabytes of data, but they're like way more data generated on a daily basis. So you can't possibly feed 1 year worth of internet data into ChatGPT or GPT-4. That's simply too expensive to train. So that's why we need to do prompting and teach ChatGPT or large language models. Pandas AI is pretty cool. I definitely recommend everyone look into it. Something I played with it, and it's pretty helpful. Cool. I'm going to get back to some of these questions later. Let's move on at this point. So we talked about data engineering. Next, I would like to talk about data analytics. And I mainly want to help everyone understand what data analysts do, because sometimes there's some confusion about data analytics and data science. From my perspective, data analytics, sometimes they need to know data science and machine learning as well. Eventually, I think data analytics and data science are the two disciplines that are going to probably merge because of generative AI. It's because, building dashboard and, producing plots and visualizations nowadays becomes super easy, right? So a data analyst value is definitely not just creating the dashboard itself. Again, as I said, like business rules, business understanding is very important. Another important aspect of it is just data prep processing or data pre-processing for visualization. The large language models are mainly trained on the internet data, but we haven't feed a lot of the business data into it, right? So I'm not sure when this is going to happen, but the reason why it's capable of writing code is, for example, you just dump all of Stack Overflow's data, right? The way people answer questions through coding and copy and pasting, Python scripts or snippets into those answers, and you can train a next token prediction model based on that. But no one well, I shouldn't say no one, but not many companies willing to sort of dump their customer data, right, in their transaction systems into ChatGPT. Maybe that's going to happen. For example, you can fine tune that, but imagine you have terabytes of data. It's just, again, too expensive. So I don't know when this is going to happen. It would be cool, but at current state, I don't think it's possible. And that basically means that anything that's related to your business's proprietary data and all the business rules, it's not capable of learning that yet. So I think data analysts and data scientists still have tremendous amount of value because your job is definitely not to create a pie chart for the company. This should be automated. And that's why you never know what kind of questions your business team is going to throw at you because they don't ask the same question because the business scenarios always change, right? If there are some common questions they would like to address, that's where data analyst, is going to build a dashboard, right? Standardize things. But as a data analyst, actually, a lot of times you're working on ad hoc requests, right? Business teams will have a lot of questions about the product, about sales, and about their customers. That's when you're going to run a lot of queries to help them understand the business better. Whether it's helping the company to make better decision or just understanding the customers, right? So that's typically what a data analyst do. So expect to sort of address a lot of ad hoc requests, answering a lot of questions through data analytics, and you're mainly writing data queries. As a data analyst, you need to join a lot of business meetings as well. Be comfortable with like preparing a PowerPoint presentation as sort of overlaps with like business analytics, but that's what data analysts do normally. There are data analysts that focus more on just like writing queries and producing dashboards, but there are also data analysts that are pretty integrated into the business process. So you work with the business team very closely. And you definitely need to be a very good communicator and know how to manage relationship as well. And also just be ready to say no, because people are going to line up and ask you all kinds of questions, and they expect things fast. And it can easily get overwhelmed. So you sort of need to get well organized and know how to prioritize things. So that's the data analyst from my view. And depending on the type of questions from the business, right? It's not always just about writing queries, merging tables, and doing some sort of aggregation. I think data analysts need to understand the statistics as well. And because you need to tell stories as well, right? Help the business understand the distribution of the data. And sometimes you need to understand statistical sampling and statistical inference, and do A/B testing, for example. And sometimes it's data scientist job, and data analytics, professionals will do A/B testing as well on marketing campaign, results. So understanding the basics of statistics and the basics of predictive modeling will be helpful as well. The line is a little bit blurred, right, between data analysts and data scientists, because when it comes to predictive modeling, sometimes it's explaining things, explaining a decision tree. But sometimes, data scientists is probably working on models that can be deployed, in a production system. But data analysts need to understand predictive modeling as well. Maybe, you're trained and proficient with SQL, but it doesn't stop you from leveraging, low code and no code AI tools, right? So there are no code tools such as H2O, that allows you to build machine learning models without writing Python code. And so a lot of data analysts, I think one of you guys mentioned you work with SAS. So SAS has a tool, a UI called, GUI-based tool called Enterprise Guide, and there's Enterprise Miner as well. So basically, you don't need to write a lot of code, but you can still build predictive models. So I think data analysts will need to be comfortable with that as well. Okay. When people traditionally talk about data analytics, it's more about reporting and dashboard, but I think understanding predictive analytics and advanced analytics will be helpful as well. And compared to data science, I think data scientists will definitely focus more on building machine learning models, right? If a data scientist only build dashboard and they do ad hoc analysis, actually a lot of them do, then that's basically data analysts' jobs, right? That's why I think data science and data analytics is going to merge as profession, because in the future maybe you can just use no code tools as long as you understand how to process data, and then the ML part can actually be automated, and then you get the insight. You need to be able to interpret those and work with the business to make better decisions. So that's I think what some of the data scientists would need to do. But of course, I think the exciting part about data science is that this field is evolving really fast. Some of the traditional machine learning techniques we learn, it's already becoming outdated, right? So I think as a data science professional, SQL and Python, these are data manipulation skills that you need to be very good at. But once you start to learn more advanced analytics, data science, and machine learning, I think in the future you'll definitely need to focus a little bit more on the generative AI side. So data scientists will definitely become more specialized in machine learning, deep learning, as well as generative AI. And data scientists also need to have very strong data manipulation capability, because they're probably going to deal with a lot of big data as well. Okay. All right. So we talked about data analytics, data science, and also, I'm sure some of you are interested in machine learning engineering and AI engineering. These are typical engineering related jobs. I would say if your title is ML engineer or AI engineer, engineering skill is probably more important. And it is a little bit confusing, because in some companies, ML engineers basically work as a data scientist. But in some other companies, ML engineers actually work as ML ops, which is like DevOps who knows machine learning. And of course, there are AI engineers that's somewhere in between. So expect to sort of know different tools and understand system design as well, because if you work as an AI engineer, most likely the work you produce is expected to be put in production. So you work with the software team more closely. And for example, if you're building a RAG systems, right? Leveraging large language model to build a QA, like build a chatbot, for example, for your company, that you can feed your company's, let's say, legal documents or whatever HR data into a large language model, and you would like people to be able to sort of just use prompting to talk to the chatbot and get the answers they need. So that means you need to understand how to build a RAG system from end to end. That involves different kind of vector databases, model deployment, because now you'll need to decide whether you're going to work with ChatGPT, OpenAI, or you're going to work with an open source large language model. If you decide to go down the open source route, then you need to know how to deploy these open source model. You can't always just use Hugging Face. You have to deploy that in your own infrastructure. That requires engineering skill, MLOps skills as well. And working with large language models in production, you need to understand how to work with different types of GPUs. So a lot of software engineering skills involved as well. I think I put that under data related jobs, because data is so essential for the successful any kind of AI projects. That's actually what I would like to talk about next. Data and generative AI. I think a lot of people sort of get scared a little bit because they think generative AI is going to replace their job. But I think they're complementary to each other. First of all, there are a lot of benefits of generative AI, for the data professionals, right? I do notice myself, like my work pattern changed a little bit. I tend to use ChatGPT more frequently. A lot of the small problems I'm trying to solve, now I'm getting into the habit of just asking questions. I think that's actually really good. But when you actually want to work on something more seriously, you need to rely on your own capability. But ChatGPT is going to actually help you do research and answer a lot of questions. I sort of use that to replace Stack Overflow, even though I notice that sometimes I still need to go back to Google and Stack Overflow. But that still saves me a lot of time and make me become more efficient. And even just writing formulas for teaching sometimes, I take a screenshot of something, I would like to convert that to LaTeX, right? Though all of these are very helpful, and preparing tables. So that's really good. And or maybe just like generating some sort of starter code. But sometimes you realize that you're actually wasting more time. You'd better just write your own code. But I'll leave this to you to decide. And however, when you want to become an AI engineer, definitely don't just focus on the models and algorithms. And I think you should focus on the engineering skills as well as the data skills. Because if you look at the landscape of large language models, a lot of the innovation nowadays, everything is based on transformer, like the similar, right, architecture. What's really different, or some of the innovation come from data. So data preparation becomes so important, even for generative AI, because there are lots of issues with the benchmarks for when some company come out and say our model beats ChatGPT 4 or GPT-4 or GPT 3.5. You can't just trust those because people always have bias. They always want to say their model is the best. And it really depends on the kind of data set and benchmark they use, right, for evaluating the models. And it's very confusing, place because there are all kinds of evaluation methodologies. There are all kinds of evaluation data set and different kind of leaderboard and dashboard or like benchmarks out there. It's very confusing. That's why I think this field is evolving really fast. So evaluation is always related to data, right? And there, I see papers, or large language models out there that basically just, cheat a little bit, right? Because the data they use for evaluation is actually sort of used as part of the training process. So that's cheating. And of course, the model performance is going to be good. But when you use that in real life, most of the real business scenarios, the way you evaluate the models has nothing to do with those benchmark metrics. So that's something you have to think about as well. And what kind of data we feed into the pre-trainings or whatever fine-tuning process, data is actually way more important. A lot of companies, they struggle to have, labeled data set, right? And cleaning all of those web data is also very important because if you don't do data filtering and cleaning, then your model might be very biased, right? Bias in AI is also a serious, problem. So again, I think as a data professional, your work sometimes can overlap with generative AI, and data is very essential for the success of generative AI. So I guess my suggestion here is that whether you want to become a data engineer, data analyst, data scientist, or even working in AI, data skills is very important. And then the business, experience of business knowledge and business logic is also very important. And don't be scared by, ChatGPT being able to produce plots and visualizations, because that's something you always want to automate because we wasted so much time just like writing code to visualize data. Now it can be automated. It's great. You can actually do a lot more deep dive analysis, but you still need to be the human who is actually interpreting the chart. I don't think the AI tools are able to do that very, very well at this point. So yeah, hopefully I make my points clear, and I would love to exchange ideas. I see there's some comments here, so I'll go back to some of these comments and